25, 24, 23, 22, 21, 20. Hello, I am John Brink and we are podcasting on the Brink from downtown Prince George, British Columbia, Canada. And everybody around the world that are watching us all know where Canada is. They know where British Columbia is, but where is Prince George? Well, you know Vancouver. We are about 500 miles north of Vancouver, or 800 kilometers. Beautiful province, puts us in the middle, north to south, east to west, in the middle of British Columbia. Beautiful day here, beautiful nature, an absolute fabulous place. Today is a special day. We have a very, very special guest. Her name is Mandy Bauer, and Mandy has an amazing background and similarities with me. She is ADHD, and we'll be talking about that. But she earned a BA degree in business administration, and graduated magna cum laude from one of the major universities. Mandy, welcome to the show.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me, John. I'm so excited to be here. And I actually looked up exactly where British Columbia was before our show today. So I am having a picture of where you are. And I'm on the other side in the U.S. in Philadelphia.
In Philadelphia. So can you imagine how there we are sitting here, we're talking like, we're sitting here together in my room here and being able to have this conversation. And that's the amazing thing about podcasting. And it's only at the beginning in my mind, and it's an amazing way to communicate.
Absolutely,
Mandy,
yes. I'm very excited to be here.
so tell us a bit about you and your background, and especially, as you already know, I'm ADHD and so are you. So start from the beginning, kind of when it started to become obvious that there was a bit of an issue, and then when you were diagnosed, and then from there on forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am very lucky. I'm one of the lucky women that was diagnosed pretty early on in life. As you know, and you listening probably know, a lot of women get misdiagnosed with depression, anxiety, but I was really lucky and I was diagnosed when I was about 14, so 23 years ago. And in school, I really liked art and gym class and theater class, and then in my academic classes, my grades just really weren't translating to how my parents thought I was pretty smart. So there was a bunch of red flags there. I got a lot of report cards saying like, Mandy would be smart if she tried, and she talks a lot and she doesn't really pay attention. And so my mom was kind of like, something's going on here. And she was a big advocate for me when I was young, helping me get that diagnosis when I was so young. So that is a big part of my mission now, working with people with ADHD, because I've been learning about this and studying this for about 20 some years now. And I feel very called and like it's my duty to help these women and men and people really understand how their ADHD brain works and how to find the success that they know is possible for them with the strategies I've been working on for the past 20 years.
As you know from me, likely already, I call it a superpower. And I was
Yes.
diagnosed much later in life. For you, what I find amazing about you is 23 years ago, when you were 14, you were diagnosed. By then, it was not widely known that there was such a thing as ADHD or ADD in some cases, and to identify it and diagnose it then, and then obviously acting with that, bearing that in mind, and then obviously take you to the success that then followed. You were very, very lucky, and it sounds to me like your mother was very proactive in saying, okay, I know she's smart, there's something going on here. So how did that part go? She was already likely somewhat familiar with ADHD, and then did you then go to a counselor or a doc, or what route did you follow?
Yes. So I think it was a doctor, then it was a psychiatrist. And you're right. Like there wasn't a lot of information back then.
No.
Basically, I got diagnosed and they were like, you have trouble focusing. And I know.
Yeah.
It's really interesting like this. And yes, my mom is absolutely very close. And this is a very similar story to people that I've heard going through my diagnosis and getting that ADHD diagnosis. She was also diagnosed with ADHD.
At what age? At the same time you did, or
At the same
before
time, so
that?
she was. It was same time as me. So she was
Yeah.
in her 30s, 40s,
Yeah.
probably maybe
Yeah.
early 40s when that was
Yeah.
happening, and
Right.
we were both getting diagnosed. It was all these light bulbs going up because the doctor gave us information, right? But at that time, it was early 2000s. There wasn't a ton of information
No.
available to me. And so we both kind of tried to figure this out together. And I was so young, right? It was overwhelming as one of the things that happens to us. A lot of information coming at us. It's a big life-changing event. Sometimes we feel overwhelmed, which causes avoidant behavior. So, of course, I kind of ignored it for a few years in high school. And I continued on that path of, just kind of all over the place, not really taking it seriously. And then after my friends were getting into these amazing colleges all of these things, I applied to a bunch, got waitlisted at a bunch of places. I ended up getting into East Carolina, which is a great school in North Carolina, and I loved it. I decided to go there, and after my parents signed this, giant loan, I signed this giant loan. I remember having this moment being like, I was sitting on the campus, and I thought to myself, this is the turning point, Mandy. Like, you just committed to this.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can do this. Let's see.
Exactly.
Let's commit to learning how to be smart, getting this done, and let's see what we're capable of.
Were you 17, 18, 19 then, or how old were you then?
I was probably around 18, 19 when I went to college, and that was really when everything started to change. It changed my entire approach to learning. I essentially just learned how to be smart with ADHD at that time in college.
So it put you from the back of the class to the front of the class. You talked a lot,
literally
obviously.
Yeah, literally and figuratively. I sat in the front of the classroom. I changed everything, John. I got straight A's my first 4 semesters at ECU. When I tell you I brought that report card home the first semester, my parents thought I took a computer class and rigged it up.
Well, yeah, because on the other hand, though, as you now know, is that it's a superpower. And that once you find that focus and the thing that really is important to you, you will do very, very well, much better than some of the average people, respectfully, because that's the power. Like for me, I always was good in writing, not in reading. I'm dyslexic as well, and I was very good at numbers, and so I failed grade 3. I failed grade 7 3 times, and then they said, "What are we going to do with this guy?" And then my parents were very beautiful people, but it was suggested send them to the mentally challenged school. They said, "No, we're not going to do that." So they got me a career and a profession of becoming a furniture maker. So they sent me to a furniture factory at 13, and so now, as you already know, that kids among each other can be difficult sometimes, and all of a sudden there was I in my coveralls going to the furniture factory and being a laborer where they were going up to college, university, And I'm proud of that today, but then it was kind of looked down at.
I can definitely understand that, and especially since we've grown up hearing how different we are, and we're not good enough, and telling us all of these stereotypes and kind of like imprinting them on our minds. When we find something we're passionate about, we seem to second guess ourselves sometimes too, because it might be
Exactly.
different than other
Exactly.
people. But you're so right. Like your new book, you're finding your passion, living the dream book. It
Exactly.
kind of think of that.
Exactly. And so the amazing part of it that the I always knew that I could do it, and the other part, and you probably know from some of my bios, is that one of the parts that changed my life is that I was born in 1940, so I will be 84 this November the 1st, and I still remember the Second World War. And today is actually a very special day for me, and actually tomorrow is the day where the Allied forces, landed in Normandy, which then it's celebrated in all over Europe, and that started the liberation of Europe from the dictator Adolf Hitler, but it affected our lives, my family's life, and I still remember the difficult parts of it. So for me, I was affected by PTSD, by the inner child, the fear of losing the one parent that was taking care of us, and so it was a bit of a challenge, to go to school. But then we were liberated by the Canadian Army April the 12th, 1945, and I again saw far too much that we should not have seen. But from that point forward, I knew I would go to the land of my heroes, Canada. And so I wanted to go when I was 17. My parents wouldn't let me, so then I was drafted into the Dutch Air Force for 2 years, and then worked in the lumber industry in Holland. My dad was involved in lumber. My grandfather was a master carpenter, and then I left Holland for Canada when I was 23 years old.
Wow. Wow. And you always knew inside that you were going to be something big.
I knew that I was just as good as everybody else. And so no matter what they said, no, but I was struggling with that to a certain extent. So for me to go to Canada was important. I was going to build a lumber mill, but it was important for me to prove to me that I was just as good as anybody else. And so that, but I wanted to start from nothing. So I took a suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, and then what I did is I flew into Montreal, then took the train across Canada from Montreal to Vancouver. My God, that's a long way to go. 4 days, 5 nights, same as in the States, right? So landed in Vancouver, went to the immigration department, and then fortunately I couldn't speak English, didn't know anybody, and didn't have a job. So there was a German fellow there. I could speak some German. So I told him what I wanted to do. I wanted to build a lumber mill. He said, Prince George, go to Prince George. It's a boom town. That's where they're building lumber mills, and they built mills and all the other things. So I did that. Today, 60 years later, I'm in Prince George. I can still see the Greyhound station here where I arrived.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
And then I stepped off the bus with my suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, and I counted my money at least 3 times. I had $25.47. So,
wow, that is so neat.
But what I did have attitude is, no matter how tough things are already then, I've always been like that. I always know tomorrow will be a better day. The other one that I had, passion. No matter what I do, I give it 150%. And then the other one is work ethic. I work harder than anybody. And even now still, I get up at 5:30 in the morning, and then I always think I'm late. I always make my bed, and every day to me is a good day, and I work hard. I still work probably 12, 14 hours a day, and or 80, 60, 70 to 80 hours a week, and I love it.
Well, because you found something you're so passionate about. That's amazing.
Precisely that, Mandy. And then the thing that changed things for me is that one day I walked into a bookstore here in Prince George, and I picked up a book, and the title of the book was Driven to Distraction, written by Dr. Halliwell. And I looked at the book, and it was about ADHD. I had no idea about ADHD, no idea. And then I wrote in the book in Dutch because I was ashamed of it, because it somewhat implied that it's a mental disorder, that now I finally know who I am. And so now the interesting part that you may find interesting is your podcast number 264. 203 is Dr. Halliwell, and I podcasted him. He wrote the book Driven to Distraction in 2003. I bought the book in 1993. I bought the book in 1997, and then I had him on my podcast here, podcast number 203, and so we interacted, and and I explained it to him, but how my story went. That it took me from the time I was 13 to the time that I was 62, when I was diagnosed with ADHD. So for nearly 50 years, I knew there was something different about me, but I didn't know until then. So that when I got diagnosed, I bought a book from Dr. Halliwell in 1997, and it took me 5 years before I go to my doc, and who was a personal friend, as well as delivered our 2 daughters. And he said to me, "Hey, John, why are you here?" I said, "I think I got ADHD." And we looked at it and we did our thing, and yes, I do. But it took me 50 years before, from the time that I was 13, and kind of having to say goodbye to my friends and get coveralls. On a Sunday, and the school came out on a Friday. My parents were beautiful people, but my dad said, "Okay, now you have to go to work." So on a Sunday, Friday, the school came out. All the kids were going on holidays for 3-4 weeks or whatever. We went to the clothing store that was a friend of his, and so I had to get 3 sets of coveralls to go to the furniture factory, but they didn't have coveralls big enough, so I had to roll them up, and the crotch was hanging by my knees. That's modern today, but it wasn't then. And so that's how I started my career. But it served me well in the long term.
Yeah, and it's so interesting that you're talking about all these qualities that you have. It seems like there's a group of ADHDers that are very similar to us, right? They're super passionate, they're determined, they're resilient, and those are the people that I love to work with. I understand that it's not always sunshine and rainbows and super fun and happy go forward, right? There's definitely a lot of people that do struggle with their diagnosis, for sure, and I absolutely respect that. Very valid, right? But I do believe that there is a mindset shift that you can control in the way that you look at and embody and live with your symptoms. And the people that have kind of turned that corner, those are I connect with those people a lot.
What I found, Mandy, is that when I suggest to people that are watching us, on not only those that are ADHD, but also I say it is virtually impossible to avoid them. They are either in your family or in your friends or in the workplace. You will encounter people with ADHD, and they are very, very interesting to get to know them, and they are very good at a lot of things. And so when I had the discussion with Dr. Halliwell, is saying that from the book, initially I thought that the frequency of occurrence was around 8%. But the more I found out about it, when I started checking on Google and looking around more and more, I believe that it's 20% or more. And so when I mentioned that to Dr. Halliwell, he said, and he has written about 18 books, and 5 of them on attention issues. He is ADHD and dyslexic, so he's recognized globally as an expert in the field. So I mentioned to him that from what I could see, that the frequency of occurrence probably is 20% or more. He said, no, John, it's 25% at least. And then the other part that my experience has been for entrepreneurs and CEOs that are successful, and the operative is successful, up to, I believe, that 50% of them are ADHD. And Dr. Halliwell said, no, John, 75% or more. And I agree with that.
Wow.
No question in my mind about it.
Wow. That's amazing. I mean, it makes sense. I talk about it all the time on my Instagram page. I mean, it just makes sense. Like all of our qualities line up perfectly with what you need to do to be a business owner. I was bored out of my mind working in corporate America. I was
and you were very successful, Mandy. You worked for 3 major companies. You were very, very, very good. But even then, you were so good you got bored on it and saying, no, this is not for me. I got to do something on my own. And you did, and obviously you're very successful.
Yeah, my mom kind of laughs about it too. Like with each of the career paths that I had, I would like get to a top level and I'd be like, we got to do something else. Like I'm out of here.
Interesting.
And I wanted to challenge myself and do something for myself and make my own money. I saw people doing it. I was like, oh, I can do that. I got to be able to do that. And it's been a huge challenge. And I've been my own boss now for about 3 years. And yes, it's been hard, but it's so fun. Like every day is something different. It works really well for my brain, my lifestyle. I'm really enjoying it, and no regrets.
And so for me, it has been a question that when I came here with my $25.47, couldn't speak the language, didn't know a soul, didn't have a job, but I knew I would own a lumber mill at some point, and I started within a year and a half. I was the superintendent of one of the larger mills. And within 2 years, already I was part owner of a small sawmill. And then from there on in, 10 years later, I started a company that is now the Brink group of companies that has 3 silos. And I'm not here to brag about how successful I am, but simply for the purposes of ADHD and what is possible, is I started 3 silos. The one is real estate, the one is warehousing, and the other one is lumber. And then at the same time, I'm an author and wrote a number of books. The first one that I did is Against All Odds. And, and it's basically not about how good John is. No, it's not about that. It is about all the other things, the challenges, and then standing up, dusting yourself up, keep going, keep going, keep going. The other one that I felt was important for me is that I do a lot of public speaking about the issues, not only ADHD, about entrepreneurship, but ADHD comes up a lot of times, and because it's something that I'm very close to my heart, and I believe, as you do, I have an obligation to speak about it. And then I wrote a book about it, ADHD Unlocked.
Yeah, amazing.
And then the other book that I wrote is the one that you already mentioned, Finding Your Passion, Living the Dream. And I just finished this one, and it will come out next month actually, is this book here, Living Young, Dying Old. It's about
Wow.
fitness and health. And that's me actually. I'm also
Yeah.
the oldest competitive bodybuilder in North America at 80, nearly 84, and competed or qualified for competition in the Arnolds, and again am training to go back to the Arnolds in 2025. So
Excellent. Well,
now a lot of people say to me, "How do you do all this stuff? You're writing these books and you're doing podcasting, and you're doing this in 10 companies and all of that." I say ADHD. That's how do I do it. you know so
yeah.
it's a superpower.
I agree. I've got a lot of projects going on. The projects that I do, I love them. They're so, I mean, again, not to like toot my own horn, but like they turn out really well. People really love them. It's really exciting, and I'm super proud of everything that I've built. And when you do it for yourself, it makes it even so much more fun. Like I'm so enjoying being my own boss versus doing a project when I was working in corporate America. Like, this is cool, this is great, right? But now I'm like, look what I built. It's so exciting, and
Yeah,
my passion for it is really also something that takes it over the edge and attracts more people to what I am working on, because I do feel like I'm authentically, genuinely happy about it, which is cool.
exactly. And I
Yeah.
do exactly the same as you do. Is that but on the other hand, I feel I have an obligation to share with others what is possible and the importance of building confidence in who you are. And I had challenges with that, especially when I was born during the war years, were very, very difficult. And then obviously not being a success story academically necessarily, I struggled with that, but I was still a very happy-go-lucky guy, and I always knew someday I could do it on my own, and I could prove it to myself more than anybody else. And but now I feel that it was unfortunate. It took me 50 years to become aware of ADHD, and although it didn't adversely affect me, but whatever I can do now to speak about the topic, write about it, podcast about it, not exclusively. I podcast about a lot of different issues, but this is always one that is on my mind, and then speak to young people in particular about the issue of ADHD, but also the other one in terms of, but I find young people in particular are so preoccupied with how do I look, what do I wear, all these other things, and have sometimes challenges with confidence who they are. And so, but I like to say that everybody, every single individual is special. There's only one of you in this whole world. And to have that confidence that you can do as much as anybody is very, very important. And then from there on, making the choice as to what that will be is, but first and foremost, you have to have the confidence that you are special.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I work with a lot of people in the ADHD community that are not going after their dreams because they don't, their self-esteem has been so impacted by their symptoms, how they, their diagnosis. So that's so interesting you say that. Personally, since I've been diagnosed for 20 some years, I'm actually also just like naturally confident person. Like I've worked on that a lot. I've done a lot of mindset work, a lot of like, confidence building things. I did theater. So like, confidence for me, luckily, thankfully, isn't really a problem, right? But if you were to give someone advice, that has ADHD on how to be more confident, well, I'm curious, like, what would you say to them?
What I would say to them is what I said to you earlier: we are so special, each individual. But then, more importantly, how about you, John? Well, even when I came to Canada here, couldn't speak the language, didn't know a soul, didn't have a job, started as a cleanup man, lumber piler, and couldn't speak the language. And then was all kind of, people are sometimes not very nice to people that have struggles with that. And so, but went through all of that, walked to work 8 kilometers, and back and forth to work every morning, every evening. And then the other part was when I started my lumber mill, after I was here only 10 years, really, and with 3 employees. Even then, as my businesses already started to grow, I had difficult interacting with people in a general sense outside of my own environment, the mill. If there were more than 3 people, I could not really interact with them because I had self-confidence issues. And then one issue that happened in 1990, 89, and I write about it in my books, is that it became such an issue in my mind, is that an ex-sister-in-law said to me, I want you to come with me and go to Toastmasters. And saying, what is Toastmasters? Well, Toastmasters, for those that don't know what it is, look it up on Google. It are organizations throughout North America, probably 450,000 people as we speak today, are part of Toastmaster Club. Usually about 15, 20 people or more per club. And they focus on communications, interaction, to become self-confident in interactions. So my sister-in-law said, okay, I said, what are they doing there? She said, I said, are they going to ask me any questions? She said, no. Okay. I said, okay, well, I'll go there. So I was sitting there, and then in the middle of the meeting, somebody said, hey, John, tell us about you. And I said, oh, my God, I'll never go back here. So I stayed there for 10 years. I became a distinguished Toastmaster, the highest level in Toastmasters. And I'm very proud of that. So again, coming to Toastmasters, there are probably, in this town alone, Prince George probably has 4 clubs. I'm sure where you are, there are clubs all around you and all around the world. I believe that probably 10 million people have been part of Toastmasters around the world. So not of the 10 million, how many go to become a DTM? Because people usually go for the time that they require to at least get the skill sets that they're looking for. Do not have to stay there necessarily. I did. But for me, it changed my life. And becoming a distinguished Toastmaster allowed me to do all the things that I'm doing today. It was inconceivable for me to do that beforehand. Totally inconceivable. Of all the people that had difficulty in interacting, self-confidence, that I've seen hundreds of them coming to Toastmasters and then becoming Toastmasters, I've seldom seen anybody even closely resembling to how bad I was in terms of being a Toastmaster. I had the fear of being there and tried several times to leave, where they convinced me to stay, and then rose to the highest level. I'm now an in-demand public speaker. I'm obviously a very active podcaster, and so the skill sets that are particularly important. It's not only about speaking, but it's also about listening, and then thinking on your feet. And so that is part of the structure of Toastmasters. In fact, what I'm doing now as we speak, This book is coming out in July. I'm just starting, just this week, I'm starting another book on becoming effective communicators. I'm not exactly sure what the title will be, but it will be precisely about that issue, because a lot of people have challenges with public speaking, and it's feared more than death by many people, and but it's critically important, not only in day-to-day lives interaction in your own circles, but also outside of that. And it's something that is not being taught well in the educational systems, in my opinion, but critically important. So that changed my life. And I was a Toastmaster from 1990 to 2000. I still go now every so often, or being invited as a speaker. And then looking at Dr. Halliwell and the driven to distraction, that changed my life. So between those two, I became a totally different individual. And so, so if I look back now at all of that it was then after my 60s that, that I became involved in fitness, health and fitness, started to go to the gym in a serious way, and everybody gets a shock, nearly died in 2008. And then I knew I had to kind of pay attention. I got a case of diverticulitis that had ruptured, and came that close, and then take health and fitness in a serious way. And so after going to the gym, have a trainer, one day somebody came to me and said, "Have you ever thought about competing?" I said, "Me? Really?" And well, as you can relate to, hey, challenge, right? I like it. So then I started competing on the local level in 2017, and then qualified in northern BC for the provincials. Then in the provincials came in second bodybuilding, third in physique, qualified me for the nationals in the Arnolds. And then obviously COVID came, and now I'm training again, but the point that I'm making is that it took me to well into my 60s until I was in my 70s when I became successful as a bodybuilder. But at the same time, about 5-6 years ago, I started writing a book. And I wrote this one, and I had thought about it for a long time, and people would say to me, "Why don't you write a book? It's so interesting," and blah, blah, blah. So, and then I stop, and then finally I knew if I don't do it now, it will not happen. And so, so the book, it took me 80 years to live it, 20 years to think about it, 2 years to write it. And,
wow.
And so the point is this, Mandy, that you already made, that ADHD was never recognized when I was in grade 7 and failed it 3 times. It was never recognized from there on in, going forward to the time that it was 1997, when here in Prince George, I found a book on it, and ADHD, and it's only then came out of the closet. And and I truly believe that for a lot of people, it certainly is not a disorder or a liability. In a lot of cases, it's a benefit.
I would have to agree. Absolutely. I mean, I don't see it as a disorder personally for myself. It's just a different, it's all I've ever known, right? So it's either woe is me attitude, right? Or we're going to figure it out and work through it and make the most of it as a positive view, like a superpower, like you've been saying. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now what you did, then you formed a company, and the Moxie's Media Lab. So
Yeah.
tell us about that.
So I was working in corporate America, and like I said earlier, I was just like bored out of my mind. And, I had a great job, really good job actually, but I just knew in my gut that I was meant for so much more. I knew I had this vision in my mind of me being my own boss and, doing podcasts like this, speaking at events, uh, creating digital products to help people. I was a teacher first, my first career, and I've always been very passionate about helping people. And when I was working in corporate America, I got really into like self-development, learning about entrepreneurship. I have a degree in business. So when I was in college, though, my business professors, they were like, "Oh, you're going to be a great employee," and so that like stuck with me.
Yes.
I got into corporate America, and then I'm like, all right, well, I guess I got to be a good employee. But anywho, so I was in corporate America, and I started doing side hustles. I was a copywriter. I did website design. I was like a virtual assistant for a little while, and all of those were fun, and I learned a lot, and they were fine, and I made some money, but it didn't really like take off like I wanted it to, and feel right. Like I knew that it would eventually. And then during the pandemic, I got asked by some of my ADHD friends. They were like, "Hey, how are you doing these businesses? Like, I have these great ideas, but I can't really get it off the ground. I'm so disorganized. I can't get started. I've got these to-do lists and I don't get anything done." And so I started sharing tips with them.
Yeah.
I was sharing tips with my ADHD friends on how to start a business with ADHD. And come to find out, my tips worked for them. And then I remember sitting on my patio and this big light bulb went off. I was like, oh my gosh, wait a minute. I have all this knowledge about how to be successful with ADHD. I need to start talking about this and sharing
Exactly.
this.
Yeah.
And I started my Instagram page. Things like quickly took off from there. I started working with clients one-on-one to help them launch their own business, to level up their businesses, and things worked. And it worked. My clients were getting results, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is amazing. How exciting. And within about a year of starting that, I was, juggling my 9 to 5 and doing the coaching. I decided to take the biggest risk of my life and quit my 9 to 5 job and see what would happen. And that was 3 years ago now. So, things have been going really good. I've worked with so many entrepreneurs to help them launch their own business. Recently, I've shifted a little bit to work with all different kinds of ambitious ADHDers. My main goal right now is to help ambitious ADHDers procrastinate less and accomplish more using strategies and skills to support all of their ADHD symptoms so that they can step into that successful version of themselves that they know is inside.
Right. And so how do you attract your clients?
I have an email list, and mostly on Instagram. I've got a really amazing following, a great community there. I have been attracting people on Instagram. Like I said, I've got an email list. And then tomorrow, when this is actually coming out, I'm launching a brand new, ironically, I'm launching a brand new an offer called the Procrastination Playbook. So
I like
it's
it.
all kinds of strategies that help people with ADHD learn to procrastinate less so that they can accomplish more and get closer to their goals.
I love it. Now, what is your website, or how do people contact you or look at? Do you have a website at this point, or?
I do, absolutely. I made it. So one of those little side hustles I had was website design. So I actually made my website myself, which is very good and very exciting. My
Yeah.
website is mandybauer.com, B as in boy, AUER, and that's Mandy with a Y. And then you can find me on all socials at Hey Mandy Bauer.
Okay, so and so what is coming out tomorrow, you said?
It's called Procrastination Playbook. It's a
Is that
21-day guide.
okay? Is that also have you got a website for that, or how does that come out?
So that is all. It's going to be all linked on my Instagram page. It's going to be
Okay,
the link at the top. So it's really awesome. Like I've been working on this for a while. It's 21 days of short, digestible lessons. Right? We need to have these. It's all ADHD friendly. So each
right.
day, if you can devote like 5 to 20 minutes or so, I'm going to give you one quick lesson, and all of them work together so that by the end of it, you have all of these amazing skills that are going to help you procrastinate less and cross more things off your to-do list. So we're doing all kinds of things like we're prioritizing, we're learning how to break down projects into manageable steps, learning to stay organized, how to keep the momentum going to actually finish a project and not give up at 90% when the dopamine is gone and you're, kind of
Ex-
like
ex-
when your focus for sure. Yeah. So it's really awesome. I have a bunch of people on that signed up through the wait list already. So tomorrow, actually, it's perfect. The early bird pricing is happening tomorrow. So I'm super excited about it. And another fun thing that it comes with it is I personally love body doubling. It's a really great tool that works really well for me. So anybody that signs up, we're going to be invited to like 2 hours of body doubling a week. That's going to be happening until the end of the year. And just another kind of like bonus to really bring people into a community. I really do feel like, you don't have to do this alone. It's hard, it's tough, let's do it together, support each other. And that's a big, theme on my page as well, is like, you don't have to do this alone. Like we're in this together. As long as you believe that you can do it, like let's work together and get it done.
What is body doubling? What does that mean?
So body doubling, it's a productivity technique where essentially you are working on a task with somebody close by. So they can either be in the room with you, or in our case, we're going to be virtual. So
Right.
it's help focus, help momentum, motivation. And what it is really I meet with people about 2 hours a week. We get on a Zoom call. We take 5 minutes to say, hey, what are you working on today? Write it in the chat or say it out loud. And then for the rest of the time, we turn our mics off and we just work. And just having someone close by, it kind of fuels that natural human instinct to not almost like competitiveness, but not like work competitive wise, but like we're like, ooh, somebody's watching, right? Like we're gonna like
Yeah, yeah.
really work on this. And I have personally found it super beneficial to myself. And so why not open it up to this amazing new group of people that are, buying the playbook and wanting to come into my, space, and like, if I can offer them that help when I'm going to be working anyway, right? Like, let's do it together.
I love it. And
Yeah,
so the client base that you're looking at is because you are virtual. It's not limited to North America. It probably involves anybody anywhere in the world.
totally. It's so cool. Like you said earlier, I've had clients in Australia, Ireland, the UK, Germany, like Canada. I had somebody in Bulgaria. Like it's amazing,
Amazing.
the people you can connect with when you have the internet. It's amazing.
And it just started, really, in my opinion. It is already moving forward. About 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I started blogging to a certain extent, and then we started with the next thing. We're starting with a local television group that on a regional level, and did podcasting with them, or a form of podcasting. And then COVID came. And they're
Mm,
saying, what do we do now? And saying,
mm.
now I had an apartment here that I had bought as an investment, a good location downtown Prince George. Is saying, well, let's turn it into a studio. And so we did. And
Wow.
then saying, if you have a studio, let's make sure we do it well. And so that's what we did is I would sit there, the guests be sitting here. And then the longer we did it, then, we have a lot of very talented individuals in our region. And then, but we had to make the circle bigger. So I thought
Yeah.
about going to Vancouver, setting up another studio. And then we said, maybe watching TV these days, CNN and all the other guys, is they're doing so much virtual. There you have three faces on the television, and it used to be lots of hiccups, but not anymore. It was virtually seamless. Saying, how about doing virtual? So that's what we did. And then again, we have lots of cameras. We have lots of Andrew and our team are very skilled at making sure we do it well. And then from there on in, we, as you were saying, we podcasting around the world. And I think and on YouTube and all other places, I think we're approaching 250,000 subscribers on YouTube alone, and it is an amazing, powerful vehicle.
It really is, and I love when you post, your new subscribers. You're really growing very quickly. So kudos to you. You're obviously having a lot of really great conversations that people want to hear about. So, and it's so cool. I mean, you must meet so many great people.
I find it amazing, Mandy, as you do, and it's not all on one topic, but obviously ADHD is very, very important to me. But we have had all kinds of different topics, and I like interacting with people. And obviously, if you now look back to John before 1990, or when he left Holland, I was born in northeastern Holland, and close to the border with Germany, and we speak a dialect there, and our dialect is very regional in that province. Holland's a small country, but we have several dialects. If I have my dialect, the people that speak High Dutch, they call it farmer dialect, so, and they don't even understand me, so I had to acquire. I loved speaking dialect when I grew up. So obviously not over successful in school. And then when I left there, I had to acquire speaking High Dutch with an accent. That was already looked down at. And then I barely got that under control. Then I went to Canada and I just learned to speak English. And so, so I did okay in the process, but so the point that I'm making is that that even now, all that background, all that experience served me well in the long term. And going through all the ups and downs as somebody with ADHD, wondering what's wrong with me, why am I not, and knowing deep down that I had the same skill sets as everybody else. I'm not saying I was better then, but at least I had to prove it to myself. And it was because of those coincidences, and obviously podcasting is part of that process, becoming effective communicators, good listeners, and then talking to the rest of the world on all kinds of different issues. And the broader your background is in terms of experiences, the more you can interact and share that with other people.
And that's good for us, right? We love bouncing around to different kinds of topics. So that's
I
perfect.
love it. Yeah. So,
Yeah, that's so true. I love that.
so you found your niche, no question about it. You are growing and starting tomorrow. This podcast is live as well as obviously it will be also released tomorrow. And, it's going to be very, very interesting. I like doing live podcasting And I do some podcasting and I talk to the people that have me on as a guest, and I love to do that as well. And then I asked them, I said, well, when are you going to release it? They say July the 30th. I said, are you kidding me? That so respectfully,
By then, yeah.
what is wrong with tomorrow?
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, I think
But
that's awesome. Your team has been really nice, and hopefully, I mean, I think this has been a great conversation. I doubt they'll have a lot of editing at all.
there will be none because it is what it is now, and I love it. Mandy,
Perfect.
it
Me too.
has been a pleasure to have you, and I will send you copies of my books that I have,
Oh
and
my
I will
God,
sign them
thank
for
you.
you. And then
Perfect. Oh, I'm so
let's make sure we stay in touch.
We will, absolutely. Absolutely my pleasure speaking. Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed this conversation, learned a lot. You're really cool, and I am very grateful that you all reached out and wanted to talk to me. I'm very, very grateful.
Well, the feeling is mutual, and I have a lot of respect for you, and I know you will be very, very successful.
Oh, thank you so much, John. The feeling is mutual, and this has been great. Thank you to everyone that listened, and I hope to see everyone soon.
And to the
Thank you,
people
John.
that are listening, subscribe to our podcast because they are important. That gives us the encouragement to keep going, which we will, obviously. Like our podcast and comment on it wherever you feel. And again, it was a pleasure. Mandy, we'll stay in touch. Take care.
Thank you, John. Absolutely. Bye.
Bye.